Hey everybody, this is Jeremiah at Racing. We are back for part 3 of the series for the new and inexperienced drivers. This should be the last part. If I feel like I need to add anything, I'll create a part 4. If you haven't watched part 1 or 2, I'll leave links up here in the corner. Now, if you guys learn anything or enjoy watching these videos, make sure to hit that subscribe button down below, give the video a thumbs up, share with your friends. Make sure you guys stay tuned to the end of the video to see who I picked for the Daytona 500. I did do pretty well on my picks for the duels. I picked William Byron for the second duel. That one was correct. I was pretty close to my pick for the first duel, too. I picked Keselowski, and Logano ended up winning. I did say that I thought it would be a Penske car. I just picked the wrong Penske car. And with that, we'll get to the video. So the first tip I have for today is to make sure everything's packed and organized and ready to go before you leave for the track. That way you don't have anything to do when you get to the track besides unload the car. I know I touched on it a little bit in the last video, kind of to do that, but I just wanted to reiterate it because last thing you want to do on your first day is have to get to the track and still worry about getting stuff done when you can just kind of be focused on what you have to do that day. It's obviously not as enjoyable if you're always thrashing around to get done. You also may catch something if you prep ahead of time that you wouldn't catch if you were trying to hurry up and get everything done before the races started. You know, you may forget to put a tool in the trailer if you're in a hurry, or may forget, grab a set of tires that you wanted to grab. It seems stupid, but simple stuff like that can happen if you're busy and in a hurry. So the first one is to make sure you're prepped and ready to go. The second tip for today is to bring spare parts and be ready for anything. You never know what parts you'll need because you obviously don't know if you're going to get in a wreck or what's going to get broken or anything like that. So bring as much as you can, as much as you can afford, as much as you have, as much as you can fit, basically. And have a plan of who's in charge of what. If you're by yourself, obviously you're doing everything. But if you have multiple people, okay, you're in charge of tires. You need to check pressures, make sure I have tires ready to go, make sure tires are up in the hot pit if I get a flat, stuff like that. Another guy could be in charge of adjustments on the rear end. Another guy could be in charge of adjustments on the front end. I usually only have 1 or 2 people with me, so breaking it down is pretty simple. I do certain things and they do certain things. But make sure you have that plan ahead of time. That way you're not trying to delegate while you're also trying to get stuff done yourself. And have a plan for fixing things. Make sure that the people that you bring with you kind of have some sense of what to do so that they're not just staring over your shoulder while you're fixing everything. If nothing else, if they don't know anything, teach them where all the tools are, make sure they know what they're called. That way when you say, hey, I need this wrench, they know exactly where it is and they're not wasting time looking for it. And you're not yelling back and forth trying to figure out where that tool is while you're also working on something. They can grab the tool while you're actually working. So that's number 2. Number 3 is get good help. You obviously want any help that you can get because obviously it's better to have 2 hands than 1. But make sure you're not getting help that's going to actually be more of a hindrance than they're helping. Make sure they're not going to be in your way or just take up your time trying to explain how to do things when you can do them faster than what you can explain it. Obviously, you don't want to be rude and turn down help, but bad help is worse than no help. I should know I had bad help in the beginning of the year with a couple people. Didn't really know what they were doing. Thought they did. I thought they did, and ended up hurting me in the long run. If you don't have any help coming with you, when you get to the track, see if there's anybody around you that might help you. If you know who runs up front, try to park next to those guys because as long as they're not busy and they may not have to make very many adjustments to their car, they may come over and help you out a little bit, or eventually you'll make friends with them and they can help you at home before you get to the track. Obviously, don't blow off anybody that's going to try and help you. You don't want to be rude, but you also don't want help from the people really that are running in the back of the pack all the time. Unless they're new maybe and they know a lot, they just haven't got figured out how to drive yet. If there's somebody that's been racing for 10, 15, 20 years, and they're still running in the back of the field, they're running in the back there for a reason. You don't want their help. So don't be rude, but if they offer you advice, take it with a grain of salt. Because obviously, if they've been racing that long and they're still in the back of the pack, there's probably a reason. Get good help is tip number 3. Tip number 4, try and learn before you go to the track. Learn the track. I touched on this some in my last video. I'm just going to breeze through it real quick. Watch YouTube videos, see what the lines fast guys are running, do some iRacing if that track's available on iRacing, stuff like that. Anything helps, especially if you're new. So that'd be my 4th tip, is to learn before you go. Tip number 5 is go to any early season practices that you can. Even if it's not the track that you're going to normally race, having laps on any track is going to help you when you're new to the racing world and you haven't had much experience. I drag raced for 10 years, but when I came over to dirt, it was a whole new animal. So just because you've raced in one series doesn't mean it's going to translate to the dirt. So go to any practices you can. It may cost $20 to get in the gate. You may not get anything back at the end of the night like you would if you were racing and you got tow money. But you're going to get a lot of practice laps in a low pressure environment. Whereas if you're racing, you're wanting to do well. You're You know, you have other cars trying to be fast and get around you, and you don't want to be in anybody's way. Well, if you're practicing, they're not in such a big hurry to try and get around you. So you'll have a better opportunity to learn at a practice than you will at the race. Plus, you know, I know you get hot laps and stuff at the races or qualifying, but that's only 2 or 3 laps. So that's not really enough time to get comfortable in the seat. And the practices also give you time to make a couple adjustments on your car, small changes, and see how they affect the car. And then you can go back to where you were if you didn't like that change. Obviously, don't change the setup a lot from when you got the car. I said that in my last video, because usually the car is pretty close to where it needs to be. And another reason to go to those practices is once you get a little more comfortable in a low pressure environment, your first race will go a lot better. So that was tip number 5. Go to the early season practices. Tip number 6 is don't worry about where you finish. Don't chase positions. Don't say I want to finish in this position in my first race. Because in your first few races, even your first season, you're learning, and that's your main objective, or should be your main objective, is to learn. Because yeah, you might win a race or 2 in your first season, but ultimately, if you spend the season trying to chase a certain finish instead of focusing on getting your car faster, getting your car better, making yourself more comfortable in the seat, learning to drive a car that's not quite right, stuff like that, that's going to make you better in the long run. If you're constantly chasing a finish, you're probably going to overdrive the car, you're going to knock down the wall, you're going to bang stuff up, break stuff. Don't chase the finish. Get comfortable, learn how to get faster, learn to make the car faster, adjust the car to get faster, and it'll benefit you more in the long run. Your first few races, you should be trying different lines, learning different things. One race, run the bottom. One race, run the top. Try and run in different lines in different track conditions so that you get used to how to control your car, certain lines, certain conditions, because you're not always going to be able to run the bottom. You're not always going to be able to run the top. You're not always going to be able to run the line you want. So when you learn how to drive different lines under certain conditions, when you get faster and you need to get around somebody, you're going to have experience of running different lines to get around people compared to running your fastest line every lap. You want to try and hit your marks every lap, don't get me wrong, but when you're having to pass cars, you're going to have to run different lines. So try to hit a consistent line a couple times, but then move your line around. Obviously, make sure you're not jumping around all the time, because when leaders will come up on you, you want to be running a consistent line so you don't accidentally take them out because you don't know they're there. These cars don't have mirrors in them, so you can't really see behind you. Mainly just learn the car and get yourself better, get the car better before you start worrying about where you finish. That's tip number 6. Tip number 7 is to have someone record you, either with a GoPro in your car if you don't have somebody there to record you, or even just with their cell phone from the stands. Because then when you and your crew are trying to talk about, well, I felt this here and I felt that there and whatever, you can kind of watch the video and tell them, this is exactly where I felt this is where I felt that, and they get a better visual of what the car's doing at that exact moment. Or people that are trying to help you that are good, if you have video for them to watch, because if they're out there racing at the same time as you, or if they're busy watching somebody else, they're not going to watch you all the time and see what you're doing. So if you have video where they can say, hey, you're entering too high, or you're not getting the car set early enough, or you're not driving in hard enough. One of the hardest things for me to learn with these cars, and everybody kept telling me it, my car would not turn into the corner a lot in the beginning of the season. Part of that was my car, but part of it was me not driving the car hard enough. The sport mods drive better the harder you drive them. If you go into the corner harder, you're more aggressive with the car, they actually drive better, they'll turn better. They're not a car you can just putt around the track and expect to be fast. You have to drive them aggressive. But until you learn how to drive them, don't drive them aggressive. Be cautious. Worry about being consistent. Drive within your limits. Another reason to have people recording or to have GoPro is so you can watch later on when you're at home or whatever and not worried about the car, and you can see where and what you did wrong if you made a mistake. And if you go in a little too high and it makes you miss the whole corner because you missed your line, you're going to see that on the camera. So watch that stuff, pay attention to it after you're done, and learn from it. It's kind of like watching game film if you were playing football or some other sport in high school or whenever, and you had to watch game film of the opposing team. Basically watching game film of yourself to see what mistakes you're making so that you can fix them. So that's tip number 7, is to have somebody record with a GoPro or a camera. Tip number 8 is to nut and bolt your car between races. After you're done racing and you go home, make sure to get under your car, make sure everything's tight. You may have a header bolt loose because those come loose pretty often, even if you are for sure they were tight when you put them in. They just work themselves loose because of the heat and expansion cycle on the motor. Check basically every nut and bolt on the car between races. Obviously, you don't want to take everything apart between each race and stuff like that, but make sure that stuff's tight. Just check stuff that you think would be loose. Try and get every nut and bolt you can think of. Grease and lubricate all the joints, everything that moves, everything that swivels, all your heims, stuff like that. Make sure everything moves freely. Make sure everything's tight like it should be, so that you don't have a failure out on the track. It'll save you money in the long run by maintaining your car. Let's say you have a bolt coming loose from your shock mount and it comes loose and you damage your shock. So now you have to buy a new shock because one bolt wasn't quite tight and it worked itself loose. Stuff like that. I mean, it seems pretty simple, but when you're busy and you get caught up with things, it's real easy to forget or neglect nutting and bolting your car. You'll find small issues before they become big issues by doing it. Also, stuff wears down. So if you're not nut and bolting in your car all the time, you may miss something. Also, make sure to check your fluids often. I've seen multiple people run their engines completely out of oil because they didn't check it. I had one guy, he's raced 18 years, and said he came in from the heat race, no oil pressure. And I was like, well, when's the last time you checked your oil? Well, I changed it 3 days ago. Okay, but when's the last time you checked it? Well, I changed it and it hasn't burned any, so it's got to be full still. He was running a crate and I took the check plug out of the pan to see if there was any oil. I couldn't see any oil, so I put a screwdriver down into the oil pan and there wasn't even enough oil in the oil pan to cover the tip of the screwdriver. And he had been racing for 18 years. So just because your car doesn't look like it's burning oil doesn't mean it's not, doesn't mean it's not losing it, stuff like that. So make sure to check your fluids often. Oil, transmission fluid, rear gear fluid, all that stuff. Make sure to check it. Brake fluid even. So check your fluids often and nut and bolt your car. That's tip number 8. Tip number 9, go out, relax, enjoy, have fun. The whole reason you're out there is to have fun. So now on to my Daytona 500 pick. It's really hard to pick a driver because there's a lot of good drivers. There's a lot of them starting up front. There's a lot of them starting out in the back. And Daytona is just such a wild card that it's really hard to pick somebody. I really wanted to go with Stenhouse because he was super fast in his duel. He's starting up front. When he was up front, it seemed like if he had good help, he was really hard to pass. But I honestly don't think he's going to make it to the end of the race. He's an aggressive driver, but he's often too aggressive. And I feel like he's either going to get caught up in a wreck or be the cause of a wreck because he's trying too hard too early. I'd also like to go with one of the Penske cars, Logano and Keselowski, but I also feel like they're the same way. They're a little too aggressive at times. I mean, look at what happened to Logano and Keselowski in the Clash. Granted, that's not a points-paying race, but it's a new season. There's a lot of cars, a lot of people. I honestly feel like somebody that hangs out in the back for most of the race is probably going to win it because I feel like it's going to be a wreck fest. So looking at the people that start in the back, you got Hamlin back there, you got Busch back there, you got Blaney back there, you got Elliott back there. I'm deciding this right now. I wanted to have it decided before I start making this video, but I'm still deciding. I'm going to go kind of out on a limb. I wanted to pick Chase. I really did. I feel like he's going to hang out in the back for a while, let everything calm down, maybe make a run at the end of the stages. But I'm going to go with Denny Hamlin. He was patient enough. I mean, he was aggressive in both the Clash and the duels, but he was making smart moves. He wasn't just bumping people and running people over, trying to get to the front. He was trying to make moves when they were single file. He wasn't sitting there. He got shuffled to the back a lot because he didn't have help. There's a lot more people in this race. He's going to have help. So I'm going to pick Denny Hamlin. I'd rather pick Chase because he's a Hendrick car. He's my favorite driver. I hate going with the Toyota over a Chevy, but I'm going to pick Hamlin to win the Daytona 500. So there's my pick. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments below. Also, let me know who you think's going to win. And we'll see you guys in the next video. It's going to come out on Tuesday at 6:30 in the morning. But that's where we're going to be putting the new clamps and seals in the rear end. And then the video after that, which will probably be Friday or Saturday morning, we're going to put the rear end in the car and go from there. So make sure you guys check those out. And if you learned anything in this video, you enjoyed it, make sure to like, share, subscribe. Make sure to check out all our partner links down in the description below, and we'll see you next time.